Greetings, this is the War Duck. Before you watch this video, we are talking about killers and serial killers, so there are some details that may not be suitable for all. If you are a little bit squeamish or that's not your type of thing, this might be a video that's really not up your alley. But if so, leave a comment and a like. I really much appreciate it, and hope you enjoy. Welcome back. This is the face of a killer. This is the story of a serial killing couple called the Ken and Barbie Killers. He was born on August 27, 1964 in Ontario, Canada, to a well-off, middle-class, seemingly stable family. To observers, he seemed like a happy young boy who smiles a lot. And yes, even Canada has serial killers. Anyway, underneath the perfect family exterior was anything but. This was a deeply dysfunctional family, and when he was 9, his father was charged with molesting his sister. The family, already on a downward spiral, continued to get worse. For his mom, it was just bad, and about to get worse. To add to the molestation of her daughter, her husband would physically and verbally abuse her, using words like bitch and cow. Words their son would use later on his own victims. Mom would become deeply depressed, gain weight, and finally isolating herself in the basement to avoid the family altogether. Despite that, he was still known by his friends and neighbors as a sweet, happy child with dimpled cheeks and curly blonde hair. That is until the age of 16. His mother revealed to him that he was actually the result of an affair, and his father wasn't actually his father. That, I think, was the turning point for him in his story, his trigger, as it's referred to, and the start of his criminal behavior. From the day he found out he hated his family, he would openly and outwardly verbally abuse his mother, and once he moved out, he severed all contact with his family. After severing all ties with his family, he went on to attend the University of Toronto. It was there he started to blossom into his true evil self. He soon began abusing his girlfriends. In fact, at least one of his ex-girlfriends had went to the police several times to report him for abuse, rape, and threats. But of course, nothing was ever done, or this story would be much, much different and have a much different ending. After abusing his girlfriends for a few years, it just wasn't enough, and in 1987, at the age of 22, he began raping random women in the Scarborough area. May 4th, 1987, a 21-year-old woman got off the bus near her home. Ken, as he'll be called, would follow her and grab her in her front yard of her home. She would be raped in front of her parents' house. He struck again on May 1987, a 19-year-old woman. July 17th, he made another attempt, but gave up when she fought back. Like a true coward, when they fight back, they always give up. So unfortunate he wasn't caught. About this time, he met Barbie. Barbie was born May 4th, 1970, also in Ontario, Canada. She was the oldest of 3 girls. Her father, a Czechoslovakian immigrant, worked as a traveling salesman. When he was home, he often got drunk and fought with her mother. She grew up with asthma and had been hospitalized frequently. She was a bright student and was liked by most of her teachers. Her peers, however, found her bossy and cruel. She enjoyed drawing and expressing her love of animals. She even took a part-time job at a pet shop. But when you look closer, evil may be lurking. She claimed she loved animals, but a friend said she got mad and threw her hamster out a window one day, resulting in its death. When she was 12, she started reading Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew mysteries and became obsessed with crime. As she grew up, she became meaner in her ways and enjoyed scaring her friends. At some point, She became interested in the occult and often called spirits with her friends. She was very forward and flirty with guys. Whenever she had the chance, she was getting her flirt on. She said she once dated a boy named Doug and admitted to experimenting with drugs and having sex with him. She often fantasized about weird situations related to death and had once attempted to cut herself with a knife. Ken and Barbie met about this time in 1986. He was 23 and she was 17, and they had an immediate attraction that was only intensified when they discovered they had the same twisted, sick fantasies. They quickly began their sadomasochistic relationship in which Ken acted as an abusive master and Barbie as a willing slave. The whole while they dated, Ken was also brutally raping girls in Scarborough with Barbie's full knowledge and approval. September 29th, he broke into a 15-year-old girl's bedroom. He jumped on her back, put his hands over her mouth, threatened her with a knife, bruised the side of her face, and bit her ear. Ken fled when the victim's mother entered the room and screamed. The police would arrest Anthony Hainmayer, only 19 at the time. Anthony, even though innocent, pleaded guilty to avoid a lengthy prison sentence. He was sentenced to 24 months in prison. He was released in 1990 after serving 16 months in prison, even though he was completely innocent. December 16, 1987, Ken would rape a 15-year-old child. December 23, 1987, he would rape a 17-year-old girl at knife point. At this point, he began to be known as the Scarborough Rapist. There would be 9 more attacks on young women after that until May 26, 1990, when he raped a 19-year-old woman. This time, the victim remembered everything. With her help, the police were able to generate a computer composite portrait. The portrait was released and published in Toronto and area newspapers. Police had received 2 separate tips about Ken being the rapist, one from a bank teller and a separate tip from the wife of an old neighbor. The police interviewed Ken on November 20th, 1990 for 35 minutes, where Ken provided DNA samples for forensic testing. But his good looks and charm led them to believe that he was innocent. Even though they collected DNA samples from him, it wasn't compared to the victims for another 2 years. Up to this point, only the serial rapist Ken had gotten his hands dirty, but that was all about to change. At some point, Ken and Barbie got engaged, but 3 years into their relationship, Ken was getting bored. His entitled attitude made him complain to Barbie that he wasn't the one that took her virginity. Barbie had an idea about how to fix that, though. Apparently, Ken had taken a liking to Barbie's 15-year-old sister, Tammy. He would peep into her window and masturbate to her while she slept, all with Barbie's knowledge and approval. So Barbie hatched a plan to give him what he wanted for Christmas, Tammy's virginity. On December 23, 1990, at the family Christmas party, Barbie gave Tammy cocktails spiked with an animal sedative that she had stolen from the clinic where she worked. Once everyone had gone to bed, they took the drugged-up Amy to the basement. The big sister held a rag of Hathaline and animal anesthesia over her little sister's mouth until she was unconscious. After Ken had taken Tammy's virginity, the duo took turns raping her, videotaping the entire thing with Ken's new camcorder he'd received for Christmas. At some point, Tammy began to vomit and started to choke. The couple panicked, and instead of trying to help, they cleaned up the evidence of their involvement before calling the ambulance. Tammy never regained consciousness and was pronounced dead at the hospital. Despite the chemical burns on Tammy's face, the police accepted the pretty young couple's explanation. that Tammy had just simply drunk too much and choked on her own vomit. Although the coroner noticed the strange chemical burns around Tammy's mouth and face, the drugs were never detected and her murder was ruled an accidental death by alcohol poisoning. Okay, I need a break. I would tell you, when writing this one, I almost gave up a few times. This must be one of the more disturbing things I've heard. Your own sister, your own flesh and blood, your own family. But I'm sorry to say this story doesn't get any better. And I don't think Justin was served in the end. Okay, back to the story. This seems to embolden the couple, and later on in 1991, Barbie lured another teenager she had befriended at work. She brought her to the house she shared with Ken. Again, they drugged and raped the girl and videotaped it. This time, Jane Doe survived, woke up with no memory of what had happened. June 15th, 14-year-old Leslie Mahaffey went missing. On June 14th, in the evening, Leslie went to a funeral home to attend a wake of one of her friends that died in a car accident with 3 other boys. After the wake, a large group of teens went into the woods to drink and mourn their loss. When it was over, Leslie and a couple of friends walked her home around 2 a.m. They stayed outside her home for a while after she found the side door was locked. She sent her friends home and said she would just go into the front door. Now alone, and finding the front door locked, she walked to a mini-mart called Max Milk and used the payphone. They still had payphones back then. I don't know that you could find one now. Anyway, she called a friend to see if she could stay at their house, but for reasons we'll never know, she was told no. With nowhere else to go, she headed back to her house to wake up her mom. She would never make it home. Ken had been on the street that night stealing license plates to help cover up his crimes. He saw the young girl late at night, chatted her up, and offered her a cigarette. They walked back to his car for a cigarette, but when she was close enough, Ken wrapped the sweatshirt around her head, forced her into the vehicle, and took her to the house where Barbie was. The couple took turns videotaping themselves raping and abusing Leslie over a span of 24 hours. They would give her a teddy bear to hold in between assaults. Using the same drug, the same technique they had used on the sister, Leslie also died. The killers said they were going to release her and didn't know she was dead until after putting gas in the car and taking a shower. He picked her up to carry her to the car and realized she wasn't breathing. They said they tried CPR, but it was unsuccessful. Yeah, I'm sure they really tried to save her. Oh man, okay. On June 16th, 1991, Ken and Barbie moved Leslie's body from upstairs to the basement because they were having a family get-together, minus the sister, Tammy, that they had killed 6 months earlier. Barbie noted how she had to keep special effort to keep her mom from going downstairs that day. After the family left, the couple went downstairs and used his grandfather's circular saw to cut up the body into pieces small enough to lift when covered with concrete. On June 29th, Ken and Barbie were married. The killer's elaborate wedding ceremony included their entrance in a white horse and drawn carriage. Miles away on that same day, a traumatized couple canoeing in Lake Gibson found the concrete block filled with human remains. Those remains were confirmed by dental records to be that of Leslie Mahaffey. Almost a year later, on April 16, 1992, the couple would strike again, kidnapping 15-year-old Kristen French. That day, Kristen was walking home from Holy Cross Catholic Secondary School. At the entrance to the Grace Lutheran Church parking lot, she was approached by Ken and Barbie. The killers acted like they needed direction, and when Kristen was distracted giving Barbie directions, Ken attacked her from behind. He forced her into the car at knife point. This time, though, there were several witnesses to the brazen daylight kidnapping. She was held in captivity for 3 days, during which Ken and Barbie videotaped themselves torturing, raping, and subjecting 15-year-old to sexual humiliation and degradation while forcing her to drink large amounts of alcohol. When they had had enough, they murdered her on April 19, 1992. Immediately after killing her, Barbie left her room to do her hair. She had an Easter dinner to attend to with her family and couldn't be bothered. The killer simply dumped her naked body in a ditch. On April 30th, 1992, her battered body, her hair partially shaved, was located. At some point, the Keystone Cops connected the murders together and released a sketch of the killer. Even though they had previously sketches, I don't know, these cops. Anyway, again for the second time, someone who knew Ken came forward and identified him as the person in the sketch, and even detailing Ken's love of violence. I don't know how many times these cops need to be told somebody's bad and they just don't do anything. I don't understand that. Like I said, this one was a really hard case to do. Okay. Once again, you can't fight your true nature, and true evil seems to win every time. In 1993, Ken started taking his frustrations out on Barbie. There was trouble in paradise. Barbie left her husband after a vicious beating with a flashlight. Her family talking her into pressing charges. Oops. What's the saying? Hell has no fury like a woman scorned, and this woman knew where all the bodies were buried. Literally. Ken was arrested on abuse charges. DNA samples were taken again, and he was put under surveillance. Meanwhile, while giving her statements, the task force created to solve the murders wanted to talk to Barbie, and they had some questions. They questioned her for 5 hours about Ken and about the interesting Mickey Mouse watch she wore that looked exactly like the one that Kristen French wore. Barbie, being no fool, knew the vice was closing in and quickly lawyered up. She started talking, being very careful to portray herself as the victim, forced to participate in Ken's brutal crimes for a fear of her life. Oh, by the way, give me a plea deal and I'll agree to it right now. I will testify against my vicious husband. Jeez. The deal? Well, it was called the deal with the devil, and I'll cover that in a minute. But let's just say that the Keystone Cops wanted nothing more than to solve this case quietly and quickly, and accepted the plea deal without hesitation. Having divulged her side of the story, the police searched Ken's house for 71 days, but they couldn't find the alleged videotapes. How do you search a place for 71 days and you can't find some videotapes? I mean, it's not like they were on a little disc, right? These had to be VHS's, little camcorder tapes. Alright. Ken told his lawyer about the tapes and where they were hidden, in the ceiling light fixture in the upstairs bathroom. Ken's lawyer recovered the tapes, but he would never turn them over. A year later, Ken's lawyer quit, and a new lawyer took over, except he turned the tapes over as evidence. $1 short and a year late, the plea bargain with Barbie had long been signed and sealed. When law enforcement reviewed the horrific tapes, they realized the error they had made. The deal with the devil, the plea bargain with Barbie, the tapes show that she was just as much of a participant of the crimes as Ken was. She had played them like a fool, getting only manslaughter and a 12-year sentence for her crimes. The tapes were so brutal, even seasoned detectives and reporters couldn't hold back their emotion as the transcripts were read in court. Here is the face of your killers: Paul Bernardo and Carla Homolko. In September 1995, Paul was convicted of several offenses, including 2 first-degree murders and 2 aggravated sexual assaults of teenagers. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole for at least 25 years. He was never tried for any of the 19 Scarborough rapes, even though they had his DNA. There may be many more. Some people put the number around 43 victims, and it seems none of them will ever get their day in court or justice. Seems like there will never be justice for Tammy either. In 2018, Paul's parole application was denied after a 30-minute discussion. 30 minutes seems like an awfully long time. You have to be fucking kidding me. That should have been an open and shut hell no. Carla was released in 2005, which doesn't seem to add up to 12 years. But I don't know. Maybe it was. Maybe my math's wrong. Anyway, she remarried and yeah, she had 3 kids. You have to be kidding me, right? 3 kids? Wow, okay. She tried to change her name a few times, but the courts won't allow her to hide. She was even outed for volunteering at a religious school in Montreal to great public outrage. I bet. So why is everybody so obsessed with Carla, but not Paul, who is at least 50% of his deadly duo? I think for one, she's walking around free, so there's a lot of anger and resentment toward her. But also, women who kill, especially when they kill with such cruelty and violence, are considered somehow worse than the men who do the same. It upends the old Victorian notion of feminine nature, that women aren't capable of such extreme acts of violence. Indeed, it is rare. Only 15% of serial killers are female, and most of them kill quietly and domestically. They're called Black Widows. The few female serial killers, along with men, usually do so out of dependent personality disorder. They are vulnerable, they have deep fear of abandonment, and have suffered abuse, and are typically not well educated. Carla? She fits none of those characteristics. That's why she's an enigma. A psychopath, a sexual sadist, a serial killer and rapist who's walking around free. I hope you enjoyed this Face of a Killer. Please share this video, help it get recommended to others. Please put that like, and don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.